Downloading this month's Leadership Live, where we dive in deep with today's top MedTech leaders, allowing you the chance to learn from the best. Leadership Live starts now.
Well, hello, Floodgate family. Thanks so much for joining us on this edition of Leadership Live. And today, I'm absolutely ecstatic to have Phil Kemp, the President and Chief Operating Officer of Expul, joining us today. He's got incredible experience, startup experience, incredible product. I know I won't take all of his thunder. We'll let Phil talk. I've gotten to know you. You know, we've broken bread together and we've been to meetings together. But a lot of people, they don't know about you and they don't know about Expul. So you can tell us a little bit about both. Let's kick this off.
Sure. Yeah. So as you said, I'm Phil Kemp. It's been a pleasure to, get to know you over the last couple of years here. But I've spent my entire career in orthopedics. I've covered joint replacement, upper extremities, foot and ankle, and trauma. Spent 10 years at Stryker between the U.S. and Ireland. I started as an R&D engineer, developing, launching products. I moved into both, kind of wearing both hats in upstream and downstream marketing. Eventually relocated to Ireland to help stand up Stryker's first product development team in Ireland to support their trauma business. In terms of background, I earned my MBA from NYU, had a focus on general management and strategy and change management. And I think, these are the foundational elements that really taught me how engineering, how storytelling and leadership all kind of have to dance together if you really want to, build something meaningful. So today I serve as the president and COO of Expul Orthopedics. We're an early commercial orthopedic trauma company. We've got a technology that's a mechanically reversible, expandable bolt. So if you think, if you've ever used a Molly bolt in drywall, we're essentially the orthopedic version of that. But it has mechanical reversibility. It's stronger rotational stability for osteoporotic bone. First product on the market today is a trochanteric nail to treat hip fractures. We're operating in a few kind of local regions in the United States and also recently launched in Hong Kong. And also, another thing I'm excited about, I also chair the board of a preclinical company based in Galway that's developing a coral-derived bone void filler called Zoan Biomed. And I guess if I were just kind of set the context for this chat, I guess what excites me about both companies is really the kind of the same idea of just bringing biomechanics and biology together. Mechanical stability plus biological healing. If you can combine those things in our space, you can really change outcomes. And the conversation I'm excited to get into today is, how does my leadership philosophy help kind of shape that and deliver outcomes for Expul where we're at and for any organization at any stage.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's great experience. I mean, you guys are really creating that change and that impact, especially for patients that, with those osteoporotic bones that they might not have another option, right? They've tried other things.
And in otherwise compromised scenarios, and we've got aging population, we've got people living a lot longer, and people demand more mobility and more quality in their lives later into their years. I think it's really important that we think about the solutions that are going to kind of extend as we're as a society, we're focused on longevity and being at the forefront in our spaces. It's truly what's so exciting about MedTech as a whole.
Yeah, gives people that mobility and longevity in life. It's what's awesome. And in this space, it is unique, as you mentioned, and what you can do. You've worked at one of the great companies, Stryker. You've done startups and different, and done the education. I'm curious, if you've seen all those.
Sure.
What are the key attributes, right, that really make that great leader in our space in MedTech?
Yeah. And, I love hearing perspectives on this topic. I think that if I were to basically, create two buckets in almost the way I think about it, I think it starts with humility and clarity, and arguably in equal measure. So if you're a leader in the space, we have to know what problem we're solving. We have to know who we're solving it for. in MedTech specifically too, I really think it's important that as a leader, but as an organization as well, we have to understand like how close we are to someone's life, and you have to feel the weight of that. And so when I think about, establishing direction or building an organization that's going to, go above and beyond or achieve a purpose greater than themselves, right? You got to build focused direction. You got to have adaptable plans. But a lot of this, in order to like really execute that, I think a lot about empathy and courage. Empathy being able to hear what people need, but also having courage to make real decisions and also move forward. And then when we're talking about MedTech, there's an extra dimension there, and I guess I'd probably just call it like regulatory honesty. And there's no shortcut culture that works here. And maybe the double-edged sword of being in MedTech, it can be a challenge to tackle reimbursement and market access and regulatory hurdles and all these sorts of things. And with that, integrity is a non-negotiable if you're going to be an effective leader in med device. So, if I boil it all down, I really think, it's about building teams who are safe to speak, they're clear on their goals, and they're connected to a purpose. I can't say that I've, done that 100% effectively, but I think treating that as a North Star is a really important, a really important, almost like mantra to be considering if you're a leader in the space.
I think that's quite interesting. The fact that you're talking about, you got to have that clarity and mission, right? And what are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to do? Staying focused on that, right? By the way, because a lot of times you get pulled into different treatment modalities and different options. But
that's exactly right.
Clear onto that, I think is crucial. And I really think it's powerful that where you said you've got to feel that weight of what it means to the patient. And in times where you're chasing a number or inventory or a shipment, recentering on that and having that empathy that recenters you on that to keep that integrity, to understand of why are we doing all these steps to get this regulatory approval, right? Why are we doing this extra thing? And I think that's, if you truly feel it, it makes a little more sense. I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's kind of like, I almost think of it in the context of like titles versus responsibility. I think a lot of people, especially early in your career, you're looking up and you're aspiring to see some of the people that are, on stage or leading these grand initiatives and really changing people's lives for the better. But a lot of people tend to maybe you chase titles for power, but I'd argue that not as many are willing to accept the responsibility that comes with that. Leadership isn't really just like an authority; it's ownership, and you really earn influence in this space and probably in any segment of leadership or any industry segment by accepting accountability first. And I guess these are things that I sit with and I try and study and try and appreciate. To make sure that, my values are oriented in the right direction, to make sure that the, whatever organization or team that I'm supporting is also moving with that ethos or in that, with that understanding.
No, I love that. And you're talking about organization, you're talking about ethos, a lot of that and their feelings, a lot of that, people will define as culture, right? And 100%. You came from an organization, Stryker famous for culture, et cetera. And now you're building culture, right? So give us a little sense. I mean, how do you create it, and then, how have you maintained it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess first thing I'd say is like culture really is, I believe that it's the real boss. In the, classic cliche, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Right. Peter Drucker said this decades ago. I think it still reigns true today. Totally. And culture is the type of thing that, it eats at compensation and targets and org charts and it touches all of those things. When culture is strong, leadership is something that can scale. When culture is weak, leadership is something that's just really friggin' exhausting. And it, I think it's incredibly important that, as leaders, we also recognize that culture is something that's built with or without intention, right? So if you're not, intentionally focusing on, what are the things that are going to like serve your team, that are going to allow them to, gain oxygen and build autonomy and like have agency and have purpose and all these things, it's still going to get built with or without that intention. So if you lose control of that, or if you're not, intentionally focusing on, how your teams are working together, how we're removing barriers for them, how we're, ensuring that, that they have the right resources, or they're fulfilling, unmet needs, or they have skill gaps and all that stuff. It's gonna try and find its home. It's like, think of it like a living organism that we got to, foster and grow. One of the things that I think is interesting about culture as well is like, a lot of this stuff sounds nice. It sounds like it's maybe like just the nice or right way to treat people. But I really subscribe to it because it objectively works. One of my hobbies, I love reading org psych books and behavioral science and behavioral economics. And I kind of, this has been well studied and well understood for decades, and good culture it's more than marginal gains on performance and outcomes. And so if you're treating your teams right, if you're focusing on enabling teams to just kind of go off and trusting them to do what they're capable of. They're the talent we brought in. We've made this decision that they're capable.
I think what you said there a little bit, I think is something that's important to remember.
For sure.
Is you have to be intentional, because if you're not intentional about culture, it's going to happen anyway.
Exactly.
You're just might not happen the way that you want it to be.
That's
so being intentional about those activities, making it part of your action plan, as much as sales execution or product development or shipping is part of the action plan, it's going to get the results you want. And I think I also heard you talk a lot about, that empowerment aspect, right? And giving people agency and getting that great talent and giving the great talent that agency to execute not only creates outset performance, but it's been proven over and over again to create much greater work-life satisfaction.
That's exactly it. And honestly, I think the most famous example, or maybe the person who probably pioneered at least the topic of servant leadership or demonstrated that it works, was Herb Kelleher. He was the original founder of Southwest Airlines.
Yeah.
It's just an inspiring story, and there's countless case studies about his the way he approached Southwest Airlines. He's famous for saying that profits don't care about market share. Southwest Airlines was profitable for 47 consecutive years. Yeah. That is just an unheard of metric in the airline industry. And he really did do an excellent job of demonstrating that when leaders serve employees serve their customers, and performance follows. Shareholders are happy, all the other stakeholders are happy. And so, if I really kind of distill that down, I think it's important to recognize that, and I'm not too proud to say this, I don't think leaders are the ones that create results. It's teams that do that. We're the ones that create the conditions for other people to do their best work, right? So when you do that consistently, you do that with discipline, that's how you end up doing the most good for the most people, and really achieving, these exceptional results as a company, or as, I don't know, a society, right? Yeah,
no, I totally agree. I've actually had Herb Kelleher take my ticket from a Love Field flight to Houston, Texas. He was checking people in behind the counter, taking the tickets. I think they were paper at the day, but and everyone was chattering. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, that's Herb Keller. He's up there taking, he jumps in and does the job.
Chain smoking the cigarettes and?
Well, I don't think they were letting him smoke in the airport at that point, but he might have had his favorite wild turkey bourbon behind the. Who knows?
I just love that story so much, and obviously Southwest has had some challenges in the last handful of years or so, but those early days and the stories of pilots supporting the staff to load bags in the airplanes and stuff like that doesn't happen by mandating it. That's the type of thing that happens from the culture that you build. Correct.
Yeah. No, I think that's so. Talk about some of the things companies have done right. I'm curious, what are the lessons? Maybe in a startup environment. There's a lot of people here that are in these small companies and startup. What are some of the lessons you've learned? Maybe the hard way. So others don't.
Yeah, no, I think that is, first and foremost, I think it's obviously really important to recognize, and you can almost, you tend to gain a lot more from failure or the hard lessons, obviously. And, hard things are the things that make us stronger, just in general. And I'd say even for me, like I've learned that my excitement maybe sometimes outruns my planning. And so I've come to respect that disciplined execution is, something that's important and probably even routine, right? Like I had a daughter 16 months ago now, and recognizing the value of routine. These are things that I maybe just took for granted or like didn't really take as seriously more than I used to. And so in kind of the startup environment, I think that kind of that breaks down into maybe a few different areas. One of the things that I think I've learned first and foremost is accountability that is muddy or unclear is something that really can kill momentum. And so I think I would imagine the listeners, we're all familiar with being in these conversations. You got a lot of stakeholders. You're collaboratively working to solve a problem. You walk away with what feels like clear actions, right? But nobody owns it. And if you're leaving a meeting feeling as though they're alignment, but nobody owns it, like if nobody owns it, it doesn't exist.
Tragedy of the commons.
That's exactly. And so, but really truly recognizing that accountability is the type of thing that can be a driver or a deterrent of momentum or achievement of goals. The other thing that I tend to think about a lot is, we make quick, we make hard, and sometimes we make challenging decisions at the startup level from all layers of the organization. If you gather your team and you've made this decision, right, and you're recognizing there's some silence in the room. I think I've learned, I guess, that like silence in that room is not necessarily agreement. I think it usually is attributed to uncertainty. And so if we're making a hard decision, it's important to actively pull clarity out of that room. And so if I felt that I clearly articulated why, and it's still silent and people aren't, following up with questions to continue to generate clarity around said decision, right? Then I haven't drilled down, I haven't asked why enough, and I haven't articulated that why. And so if we leave a room after making a consequential decision and it's just silent, that's a problem. And I can't say that every single meeting that I successfully execute this, but definitely an observation of mine that that silence is something that really makes a difference. And then you got to really be able to listen to the team, and I think this kind of lends itself to this idea that I like to think about expertise as in relative terms. And so if I approach anybody about anything, like I'm just super broad, there's going to be an infinite number of things that they know more than me about. It might even be just a little bit more. But if somebody knows a little bit more than me, they're an expert relative to me. And that's true when we're sitting in an organization and we're tackling a regulatory challenge, or like everybody's experience is shaped where they're at today. And so everybody has something to offer, and you can be a student and everybody becomes a teacher, right? Yeah. So I think as a leader, I think it's really important to be able to kind of demonstrate that continuous curiosity and exploration of knowledge, because that's the type of thing that kind of permeates within the team. That's how you get things done, right?
Yeah. No, totally does. I mean, those are some really powerful lessons. I mean, I've definitely been guilty of your first one. I still am. I get excited and not have the discipline of planning, right? Yeah. And the consistency that's necessary to be able to plan there. And then, realizing when you set the plan and you set these grand instructions, if it's silence is not yes, let's go. I think that's right. I've done that as well, and really being able to tease out, is there hesitancy? Is there questions? And doing it in a way that's authentic and open, right? Sure. That it gets people to talk, because I think, as you stated, it reminded me of a phrase of Emerson, that every man is my superior in some way, and of that I will learn from him, that's right? It. That you're looking, what is their experience that we can learn from? So we're refining this decision so everybody's on board versus just one person, right? That's right. And, really so I think that's really, I think those are hard lessons I'm still learning myself as well. And I actually heard a interesting talk about change management the other day. And one thing that they observed, that takeaway is, as a leader, many times we're considering the change, planning the change, right? And so we have this time to go through to kind of the loss of what we're giving up, the excitement, the vision, all the way to execution. Right. And then by the time we deliver it to the team, we're at the execution stage and we're like, let's go. In reality, we got to take them back to the beginning.
That's right. Like, I got to get you on that journey. We all have to share that journey together. And and for sure, we're going to get a head start. But you got to be able to articulate that message and allow it to kind of amplify and essentially plant that seed, and almost creating inception right across the team.
100%. And we talked about the team. You talked a little bit about having, giving agency to those great hires there. So, but how do you develop them, right? You bring that great talent in. Maybe someone's done it well for you, to get where you are, or, sure. So share some of the ways you think we should develop high performers.
Sure. Yeah. I think the first thing I'd say is, I wouldn't quote unquote, I don't believe that, insert sports analogy, throw inspirational speech together and all of a sudden a team's motivated. Like, you don't motivate high performers. Those things, you can have short-term effects, but I think it can be kind of fleeting. To really develop a high performer, you got to give them ownership, and then you got to give them oxygen. And so, going back to the beginning of this conversation of making sure that you have clear direction and clear outcomes, that's table stakes. We got to know we're all moving in a cohesive direction. We're aligned on how we're going to execute all that stuff. But as a leader, then you got to start removing barriers. We brought in talent. We go through a rigorous process to make sure that they're they fit the right need at the right time. And so inherent in that is, you're in this organization and I trust you. And so I've got to give them space to be able to fail without having to hide it. And I try to think of myself as somebody who can be steady, but not a hero. I don't need to be heroic to a high performer. And I really think the formula, I guess, is that I would emphasize is, you just take autonomy plus clarity, and that equals performance. And my job is to keep those two things in balance.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And I think, sometimes early on, and unintentionally, you have a tendency to be critical, right, of the little mistakes instead of celebrating the mistakes.
For sure.
And it means they hide mistakes, or, they get a little bit of the performance yips, right? And that's holding back that top talent. I think those are really good examples of being able to share that. Now, finding top talent, something near and dear to my heart personally.
Yeah.
And evaluate. Can you give us how have you done in the past, or what have you seen done well?
Well, I'd actually love your report card on my answer too, given that this is we look to you for these type of endeavors. But I think the very first thing I look for, and you can often find this within the first few minutes of an organization. I do try and make sure that, okay, this is my bias speaking, or is this a true reflection on it. But I look for curiosity first. Some of my favorite podcasters and authors and all that stuff, they look for the good questions. And if the talent who's coming in, they're asking really good questions, I think that's really huge. And I think it is important to consider hiring for attitude and training for skill. How many of us apply? All of us apply to jobs that we're not qualified for. If we apply for jobs that we're 100% qualified for, you're going to stagnate. There's very limited opportunity for growth, and that's true on as an employer. And so I know that there's certain positions that we look for. There's particular qualifications that are going to be table stakes, but truthfully, I'd rather hire with somebody with good judgment than somebody with an impressive resume. And I think there's some kind of softer things that I probably look for that might not necessarily be the easiest to find within a 45-minute interview, for example. But I value kindness with a backbone, I guess is what I would say. I want somebody who can disagree with me constructively, who can take a problem and then depersonalize it. It's not me versus you. It's me and you versus this problem. And so pretty much every single interview that I conduct, I like asking them to tell me about a time where they changed their mind, and really get that perspective of how they got to it. And it's really we all change our minds all the time. Maybe high ego, it happens less frequently, or a little bit more rigid, or takes a longer time. But hearing somebody explain how they get there helps me appreciate whether or not they can learn fast in a new context, and that they're not going to be anchored to prior beliefs or prior ideas that worked for them before and might not work going forward. Yeah,
it goes back to that curiosity that you started with, right? Because to be able to be curious, you can be open to create change your mind, realize, to be able to grow within that. And I'm going to restate maybe your opening, right? You look to us to, as the expert. And I think that is an important aspect. Find a great partner. That's one of the first things we'll tell you, whether it's us, whether it's somebody else, with someone internal, but people that are focused in talent acquisition. It's what you do every day. You get pretty good at it, hopefully. Right? Yeah. So have a great partner you trust. And then the second thing I heard you say is really not over-index on the experiential, but on the attitudinal, right? And uncover those right attitudes that can really have that long-term impact. I think there was a study done that 73% of the people that don't stay for the full year, they don't stick, not because of experience. 73% of the time, it's because the attitude doesn't fit with the organization. Yeah,
it makes sense. I'm not surprised by that figure, but it would be. I think more organizations would thrive if we acknowledge that, right? And and take it seriously for what it is. And when you say it, it sounds obvious, but sometimes that's what needs to be said.
Yeah, we don't always do it. So, there's a lot of people listening, right, that want to maybe have a career journey like you have, right? You started in MedTech and you got tapped, you've done bigger things, and now you're a president of an emerging commercialized startup. What would you say to other aspiring leaders that are listening to this? What advice would you give them?
Sure. Well, I guess maybe the first thing I'd say that isn't advice is that I've been very fortunate. I've been very lucky in my career. I feel like I've been right place, right time in a lot of different situations. Even most notably, when I joined Expul, I happened to be an American who has had experience building organizations. I spent a lot of time in orthopedics. I was living in Ireland. We're headquartered in Ireland, and figuring out how to tackle the U.S. market and build a commercial plan around that, understanding regulatory hurdles, and the talent pool was relatively small. That was it was kind of a niche set of requirements that bolstered me to this opportunity. So I've been very fortunate, very lucky. There's not much you can take from that other than seizing the opportunities when they come and being willing to take risks. But I think some of the more actionable things, whether you're an individual contributor or you're sitting in a large organization as a middle manager or anything like that, probably kind of distill it into a few different areas, right? So first thing I'd say is you got to show ownership before you're asked to do it. And being able to take that initiative and, being the person who moves things forward when everyone else feels stuck. That is the basis for being a good leader. Good leaders are ones that your team will want to trust to carry you into a storm, right? The other thing I'd say is this kind of goes back to that kindness with a backbone almost, but you got to learn how to disagree without drama, without all of the extracurricular conversations that you have and the gossiping and the tea and all the internal politics. If you can do that really effectively, people start inviting you into the real conversations. And so kind of coming back to this like title responsibility bit, like a leader isn't somebody that just has a title. It's somebody from the team who is a representative that they would trust wholeheartedly going into the fire.
No, I think that's really well said on take that initiative, ownership of things. And then when you do learn how to confront problems. I think I'm probably going to steal that quote you had earlier. It's not me against you, it's you and me against the problem, right? And having that frame of mind, I think is crucial. Right. And I'm just smiling as you say that, because this is my wife and I say this a lot. We feel like it's an important element of being good partners to one another. And it's just kind of nice to take stuff. I'm a big believer in work-life integration. Like I can't show up for work and deliver good results if everything's messed up at home as well. Right. And so a lot of these things really do transfer well with one another. And it is, it's just how you conduct yourself as you walk around day to day. And you don't have to be flipping switches, right? Like if I'm just thinking about problems this way, then I can tackle any problem, regardless of the context with the same mindset. No, I think that's a really good lesson for that, for sure. The last question I have for you is kind of a fun.
Let's do it.
Your favorite superhero, but the big question here is why?
Sure. Yeah. It's an easy one for me. It's Batman.
Is your engineer coming out in you? You like all the
honestly, it's probably a lot of things. I mean, first and foremost, when I was a kid, Batman was everything. Everything was Batman. I still have this like mug from a McDonald's promotion that they did. Yeah. And I use it for tea and coffee and all that stuff. And and so there's definitely a nostalgic element of Batman because everything's Batman. But I do really think that like when you get to the core of Batman's story, he's a regular guy, albeit with like immense resources. I get all that, but he is somebody who, kind of took a lot of pain, a lot of trauma and decided to kind of orient that to do good in the world. And I always thought it was, there's a lot of debates of whether he's a real superhero or not, because he doesn't have superpowers. But that's what I've always loved about Batman. He's a regular guy, unlimited resources. And I do understand that, but like using those resources for good, and kind of just setting an example for, how we can make the world a better place, even without a superpower.
That's awesome. Well, Phil, thank you so much for taking the time. I know I learned a ton from you. I've enjoyed the conversation immensely. Hopefully everyone here listening has as well. If you have questions for Phil, post them below. We'll be in touch. And if they do want to learn more about Expul, Phil, or they want to, or about yourself, what's the best way to get in touch?
Sure. Yeah. So we do have a pretty good presence on LinkedIn. You can find our company, Expul Orthopedics, on LinkedIn. Yep. Our website is x-bolt.com. I'm pretty reachable on LinkedIn. I try and stay active there. I think it's kind of a necessary evil of the industry is to lean into social media. Yep. So I'm pretty easy to find, and I'm very eager to connect with people. I love learning from people, and hopefully I have something to offer for them as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Phil. I appreciate the time and glad to have you on this edition of Leadership Live.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.